We're now finished with Unit 1 after we're finished with the metric system, and this kind of wants to know your own opinion about how well you learn this unit. The first thing on the first week of school, we looked at the 6 characteristics that all living things shared. We had objects sitting around the room, like we had crystals on a rock, we had a balloon, seashells, and we wanted to know, was it alive or not? And then you had to explain why you thought it was alive. Some people said, well, because they use oxygen or air. Well, so do balloons, but they're not alive. So what characteristics? Now, you would say that they all can reproduce, they can all grow, and not necessarily breathing or taking in food, but using materials like air and food to make energy is the big thing. React to changes or stimuli, so if you pinch it, will it react? If you shine a light on it, will it move? And then, is it made of cells or have DNA? So rocks, even though they can grow, the crystals, they are not made of cells, so they're technically not alive. How well do you understand that? Do you still have questions? The last column is what I'm looking at. Can you do it? Yes or no? Because this is your own self-evaluation. It's not really graded or anything. It just wants me to know, do you feel that this unit prepared you, or does it need to be fixed? Or do we need to go over one of these sections again? And then it says, can you ask a question that can be tested in an experiment? Here's an example. How to get my baby to stop crying. Well, then it asks, do you know how to make a hypothesis or a prediction? I made one right here. If I change his diaper, then he will stop crying. So do you know how to test questions? Do you know how to write a hypothesis? I think we've done that in your own experiments, and this is just one I thought of at home. And it's an example. So could you do that in your everyday life is the column that you want to fill out. And then can you design an experiment to test that hypothesis? For me, I would change his diaper to see if he stops crying. And if I identify the variable that I'm testing, well, the variable I'm testing here is the diaper. And how does it affect his crying? So the independent variable is the diaper, because I think that's what's causing the crying. The crying is the result to see if he stops. So that would depend on his diaper, whether it's clean or not. So you kind of know the difference between a diaper, or I hope so, a variable and a dependent variable, or your results. They depend on the independent. And then also we talked about controlling experiments. So you would have to use the same baby. It would have to be the same temperature in the classroom. I'm not changing his diaper in a classroom. Never mind. Moving on. The back side. I can recognize the variable and how it affects the outcome. We just talked about that, the diaper change, and if he stops crying. So if you were to look at an experiment, could you identify the variable they were testing and how it affects their results? I can explain why it is important to test only one at a time, or only change one variable at a time. Because if I would have changed the diaper and fed him, I wouldn't know which one it was that stopped him crying. Maybe I would have fed him and he didn't need to be fed. Maybe he was just crying because of the diaper, and so my baby would have got hungry if I would have fed him every time he cried. I can use science tools to collect data. You did that in your experiments. You measured the data. You even made a graph to demonstrate it. So if you felt that you could do that on your own, go ahead and just check off the column on the right that you can do that. And then it says, I can communicate my results of my research. Well, you made a poster to communicate, and then you also stood in front of class and you represented or presented it. So I would think so. And the last question, I can compare and defend different explanations. Maybe the baby was stopped crying because I was holding him when I changed his diaper. Maybe he just wanted to be held. So not all research is cut and dry. There could be other conclusions. So you'd have to look at the data. You'd want to test it maybe a couple times to make sure. Have a good day.